Welcome, everyone. We're going to just give it a minute here till we get everyone into the room, and then we'll begin our webinar today, Beyond the Desktop. Matt, I do see a lot of folks entering now, so.
I see the number climbing drastically.
It's like this.
Quick counting, yeah.
Yeah, it's a count up, not a countdown. So
let's see if we can maintain the number throughout.
Yes, and hopefully everyone has not had trouble getting to their locations, given snow that's hit so much of the country. I'm happy to say that I missed it, but
I did not. Unfortunately, I was shoveling out this morning, but as long as my internet holds, we're all good.
All good. All good. Okay. It looks like we can go ahead and begin. I want to welcome everyone to the start of not only a new year, but frankly, a new era in legal drafting tools and how we're going to be able to deliver them to you, the IT professionals and legal professionals who are attending our webinar today. Before we get started, though, what we want to do is to just quickly mention that the things you will hear in this webinar are confidential. Yes, you can share the information, any of the collateral that we share here, you can share within your organization. However, they are confidential to Litera customers only. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I am Sherry Kappel, an evangelist here at Litera. I have had maybe 2 or 3 different eras of new drafting tools in my career. And I can't say enough about how excited I am about this one, and Matt, about being able to present with you. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, likewise, Sherry. Sherry and I have worked with each other a very long time. So I am VP of Product, helping oversee our drafting and governance line of businesses here at Litera. I've been with Litera in some form for what'll be 17 years here in March. I've seen a lot of evolution of drafting applications. I think what we see coming from Microsoft and what we're going to be talking about today is the most exciting time if you're a kind of Microsoft Office nerd like Sherry and I.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so we're the 2 nerds. So I want to first go through a couple of housekeeping details, if I may. Our session is specifically designed for legal and legal tech professionals, and to optimize your viewing experience today, there are a few things we've done. We have muted all of our participants, and we have given you access to a questions panel on your GoToWebinar little tool strip that you have. Please, during the webinar, whenever you have a question, drop them in that section, and we will hold all of those questions and responses till the end. We're scheduled to have about 45 minutes of content. You're going to see some great stuff. So again, just realize we're going to tackle the questions at the end. For anything we can't cover, we're going to send you an email. And yes, indeed, this webinar is being recorded so you can rewatch it and share it inside your organization with anyone who couldn't be here. Okay, so today we have tailored our content to go through this from the perspective of those of you who have been legal drafting, working legal drafting in Microsoft Word for the 30 years we've been here. And then also for those who have to deliver it, the IT professionals, as well as the legal professionals who have great demands, certainly greater demands today than they ever did. We're going to deep dive into 2 technologies that are important to know about regardless of your role, and that is how Microsoft has transitioned our add-ins, and equally how they've added a new service called Microsoft Copilot. We're going to give you some use cases, some great ideas, and we just hope that the impact of all of this on law firms will give you all room for inspiration and thought and excitement like the 2 of us who are truly geeking out on this moment. So let's go into this and just start with a very simple historical perspective. It was about 30 years ago, actually over 30 years ago, that Microsoft came to the beginning of a new year, 1990, and said, you know what? We have a New Year's resolution. We want to make applications that wrap around the globe so that everybody, no matter whether they're in Mongolia or the Cherokee Nation or anywhere where you have to work with, right to left alphabets, they wanted everyone to be able to use the same software application. This was audacious, this was fantastic, and this has actually happened, right, for all of us. And so, Matt, it's kind of interesting when you think about this, that guess what? If you have a feature that frustrates you in Word, like what might be a default that frustrates you?
For me, it's still Microsoft's default heading styles are blue. I get why that Microsoft might have picked that because their color is blue, but for the general population, blue, well, especially for the general legal population, blue's probably not going to cut it.
It's not for a professional document work product, and that's the point, right? But it's nice to know that you have commonality of that with everyone in the whole world, including me. But the reality is that Microsoft knew that this wasn't enough, because even though everyone could use it, no one who uses it professionally was going to use it the way it came out of the box. So what they also did in parallel to this is they gave all of us who are software developers or even enterprise developers, they gave us tools to do things with. And if you look at this chart, one of the things you are going to notice is that for 26 years, we have been stuck. We have been stuck with a single development tool that allows us to do, certainly, Word can do our bidding, Outlook can do our bidding, but it takes a lot. You launch the thing, right? And you see a parade of add-ins that are loading. It's heavy, it doesn't go fast. It really is not an intuitive, attractive user experience. And so what's really great is that in the last few years, Microsoft has released a number of new design and development tools and services that we can now begin to take advantage of. And that is the whole essence of our webinar today. So let's now move into what exactly is a Microsoft Office add-in. How is it different? Well, when you launch your application, Microsoft Word, you don't see all of that overhead. It doesn't have to load anything. It only loads it when you, as a user, call upon it. These are huge benefits, and equally, it gives the user a much better experience interacting not only with the application, but also with these professional tools that fill the gaps where the tools don't address what we need. We need to have access to data. We need to have access to our enterprise contacts. We need to have access to maybe details about our clients and our matters. Well, all of this now we can reach through very lightweight connections, and that not only lets this run faster, it reduces all of the destabilization we've seen in our applications over time. So again, since we've been stuck for 27 years, Matt, I think our users now want to know what exactly this does to benefit the legal professional. Well, it brings true benefits to you because the time savings that you will get by having access to all of these things without jumping out of the application, having 4 monitors, you may still have 4 monitors, but now you can use them differently. You don't have to jump out and keep seeing, grabbing and pasting and so forth. The legal professionals can get up to speed on their first draft faster. We're actually going to demo this today. Equally, you are going to have access to all of these same tools on every device that you can license Microsoft Office or M365 for. So you can work on a train, you can work on a phone, you can work on an iPad, you can work literally across the spectrum of devices. And finally, you are going to have not only better results, but a better experience getting to them. So this is, again, the essence of our webinar today. And now, Matt, since we've shared with everyone kind of like the lay of this land, what more do they need to do and know about Microsoft add-ins and this new frontier?
Yeah, I think we're going to get into that. We're going to bring up a quick poll here, just a couple points as we kind of leave this section and head into more about the Office add-ins. You might have seen on the timeline there, we did spend there was that good chunk of time on the timeline where we were in the COM world. Now, COMs, obviously, or Visto applications aren't a bad thing unto themselves. It's when you start adding more of them in that Office environment, you can get into issues with latency and that type of stuff. But it did have a very great purpose. It has that tight integration into the Office suite that allowed us to get very specific in certain technologies where Microsoft and its Office and its capability set was more of a generalist in nature. You're going to see some of that as we also start talking about Copilot in a moment here. That Microsoft, again, is still largely a generalist, but when you can tack yourself onto it with some of its new capabilities, you can get very specific and become more of a generalist like we like in the industry. I will also call out, I believe there is a poll on screen, and we are asking the quick question of, is your firm using new Outlook? This is one of the areas where we see Microsoft making advancements, at least pushing the Office envelope more than any of the other Office applications right now. Why I say that in particular is new Outlook. The biggest thing to know with new Outlook is that it no longer supports COM add-ins. So your vendors need to be looking at this new Office add-in model, this new more web model. On Sherry's timeline, I will point out, you have seen where they introduced O365 web apps about 13 years ago. Now,
13.
Yeah, 13 years ago. But so why didn't a lot of the vendors move at that particular point in time? We did see certain vendors extending some of the desktop capabilities into O365 web apps, but what we had at that point in time was Microsoft really wasn't totally behind web at that point. And so because as you step outside of the object model, you need a robust set of APIs on their Office JS model. They weren't necessarily there at that point in time. Now, Microsoft has made tremendous advancements in their Office JS model and their Office add-in models to allow largely all these legacy common desktop applications to be reimagined, rebuilt in the Office add-in world.
So Matt, the poll shows that 48% of our firms attending today, 48% are on new Outlook. This is so
higher than I would have expected.
So exciting. And new Outlook, of course, has, it has no ability to support a COM or Visto add-in. So this new frontier is their current frontier. So this is exciting to see this transition take place.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing from Outlook right now is where we expect the Office suite to go, and is why the importance of Office add-ins is so top of mind for us here at Litera, and why we want to continue to educate the legal market on it, because we know we were stuck in that 20 to 30 years of building COM Visto add-ins, and at some point Microsoft isn't going to fully support those applications anymore, and we need to be making sure we don't want to be caught flat-footed. So what Microsoft has been kind of dripping out some of some of their web applications. They had released their progressive web app for Outlook. Some of you might have been using that. I've probably been using the PWA for close to 2 years now for Outlook. It adds additional robust capabilities for around the calendar that you don't necessarily get on the desktop. Now they've largely taken the progressive web app and folded it into the classic client, which is now new Outlook. But what we are seeing from Microsoft Office is new Outlook, and potentially where the other Office applications are going is you need to be connected to the internet. Your third-party applications that plug into these systems essentially need to be built on like web pages that tack inside of these very modern applications from Microsoft. So what we want to take a look at in the next slide here is some of the differences largely between Visto, Visual Studio Tools, and COM add-ins versus Office add-ins, and what are some of the benefits that we see as your vendors as you build these applications. So the first one is just the development environment itself. VSTO, COM, you'll kind of hear us use those terms interchangeably. Oftentimes they are similar, they're very similar in nature, but VSTO, standing for Visual Studio Tools, As Sherry pointed out, they were largely compatible with Office 2010 and later. They allowed for very, very deep integration into Microsoft. We could format, style, make large modifications to the document and the Word object model with this type of third-party application. What an Office add-in model is, it's largely, as I mentioned, a web page. It's built using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Again, it is a web page essentially you're building, and it's tacked itself inside of Microsoft, inside of one of the Office applications. So from an integration perspective, we do see this being easier. We'll kind of get into the other benefits around performance and supportability, maintainability, security, and those types of things. A big one we hear from our customers a lot is performance. Litera is not your only vendor. It's probably not your only COM or Visto add-in in the Office suite. And we know you're usually spending a lot of time in Microsoft Word and Outlook. And the more of these COM add-ins you have, the slower that Word performance startup time is, or just the performance of that Office application is. This is a limitation of Visto add-ins. They're fully integrated into that suite, and they installed locally for we'll call it better reliability, but that does come with a price. The Office add-ins run in web context. They don't involve running code on that user's device. Largely that the processing or business logic is handed off to a server. So from an end user perspective, we're talking hyper performant applications that can handle the tasks, these very specific tasks we need them to handle. From a platform limitation, largely we were limited. If you built a COM add-in for Microsoft Word, it only worked in that desktop client, and that is it. The customer base on this phone, largely all of our legal customers are on the 0365 subscriptions right now. You get to install and use that Office license on up to 5 devices. Wouldn't it be great if you could also use your third-party application on all of those devices as well? That is another benefit of the Office add-in. It is cross-platform. It is largely agnostic to device. So anything your vendors are building from an Office add-in perspective, it will work in classic desktop. It'll work on Word Online, Word for Teams, iPads, Macs, same code base, same user experience, consistent across all devices. Big benefit there. From a deployment and maintenance perspective, Sherry hit on this. Pushing out, deploying a lot of the legacy COM Visto applications is a big requirement or significant time investment from our IT teams and resources that need to maintain this stuff. Moving forward with the Office add-in, we're talking about lightweight manifest files that can be deployed from a centralized location. These applications also have the ability to be deployed to Microsoft's store and accessed directly from the Microsoft store that is now integrated into the Office suite. From a performance, this is probably the next two I think I have on here are what I see as the biggest impact. One is the performance impact, and I'm largely talking about startup time here. So Visto obviously could directly impact the performance of the Office application as the code is running on that user's device. For the Office add-in, very minimal impact on user from a performance perspective as the code is not running on the client. It does require an internet connection, but largely in our conversations with our customer base, that is not an issue. So just kind of outlining there again, the benefit to the legal profession is we hear consistently, especially Litera and the drafting applications, what can you do to improve my startup time as we look to move our drafting applications to Office add-ins, which we'll get to later in the webinar. The startup performance should go back to 0. We should have no impact on the startup performance for Microsoft Word. Okay, so I'll get to the support one in a second, but capability limitations, it is worth noting, I kind of outlined this. Sherry's timeline indicated that Microsoft gave us these 0365 web apps. Office add-ins is like the next iteration, the successor essentially to those web apps. They're essentially the same thing. They're React-based web applications that you're building. Historically, Microsoft wasn't necessarily focused here for the last, we'll call it 10 years. Over the last 1 to 2 years, they've been very focused on all things cloud and making sure the libraries that we need to hook onto to do specific actions to your document or documents on screen have the appropriate set of APIs. Microsoft's Office add-in team, we try to meet with them somewhat regularly. We'll even admittingly say their order of priority was first Excel, then Word, and then Outlook. So if you had an application in Excel, those APIs available there in the Office JS model were most likely largely there, but not necessarily as robust for Word or Outlook. But right now they've focusing on Word and Outlook more. So largely the third-party applications that we know and love as Com, Visto today can be moved over. It is absolutely a key note though. You need to look at what is the application doing with the component object model and see if there are any deltas. Something not available in the Office JS Office add-in model yet. We have not run into any limitations in our investigation, but it's worth absolutely doing that investigation. One of the biggest ones, or maybe what I think I see as the biggest one, is the impact on patches from Microsoft Office. So a lot of us have, as mentioned, are on O365. We're probably on the semi-annual channel, meaning Microsoft is forcing patches to us every 6 months. Some of us have even moved to the monthly channel. So you're getting these patches for the component object model once a month. Well, it has a higher tendency, obviously the third-party vendors try to avoid this as best we can, being impacted by those particular patches. Well, if we move outside of the component object model, we abstain from impact of those patches from Microsoft. So one of the kind of silent or hidden benefits of moving to the Office add-in model is significantly less impact to your users as Microsoft roll patches to Com, because it is outside of that object model over here in the Office JS API, Office add-in land. So totally outside of that. I see that as one of the bigger benefits. Sherry, anything to add there as we kind of transition out of the differences between Visto and Office add-ins?
I really see them as two very separate eras, right, of integrating with these applications to bring us our professional features. But one of the big words that's jumping out at me on this slide is Mac. The fact that this now means that the Mac can be used to bring our users, our legal professionals, tools that are for legal professionals. And this has been something that, we have seen throughout the last so many years. So that experience will improve, and that is fantastic.
That's a great point. I think we also hear a lot of firms that, historically it was all the desktop image. What are we doing with the desktop image? Now we hear desktop images as well as iPad images. Like, what are we doing on the iPads
Correct.
that we're going to do maybe our partner level at the firm? These applications that are on the Office add-in, again, same user experience, same application, same code base running across the iPad, Mac, PC, which is a huge benefit.
It's huge.
The
other thing, Matt, that I think is wrapped up in all of this is the reality that when you implement an Office, a web-enabled Office add-in, right, in this new M365 world, what happens is the back end, you really do need to invest in either access to infrastructure or infrastructure itself. And so this comes into play, and why I mention it is for all of you on the call today, just understand that there's a bit of a building of a foundation that you'll need to plan for, budget for, and prepare for, because that is what lights this whole thing up.
Yeah, no, great segue. All right, so we're kind of talking about Visto versus Office add-ins and that transition, pros and cons there. One of the biggest new, what we'll call Office add-in capabilities, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is Microsoft's Copilot. And I think if you've seen anything recently from Satya himself, it is, we are the Copilot company now, where they used to be talking about, we want to be available from anywhere on any device. That was kind of their tagline. Now it's, we're the Copilot company. They want these virtual assistants in everybody's hands. And we are very interested, as we talk to our customers, our customer base, this legal community is very interested in what this means for us going forward. So we want to take a quick poll and ask, is your firm using Copilot? While you answer that question real quickly, I'll kind of just, for those who aren't aware of Microsoft Copilot, I'll kind of just state it is largely a generalist virtual assistant, and I want to emphasize the word generalist. This kind of goes back to what Sherry was talking about when Microsoft had this grand idea of making the Office applications work for everybody, regardless of who you were. Copilot is a good tool for certain tasks, but again, we have to keep in mind it is a generalist, and we work in a field of specialists. But it has benefits for us today, and then what additional benefits can we get out of Copilot as we look to our vendors who might be migrating to Office add-in models. We'll talk about what the Office add-in model and how it can work in conjunction with Copilot as an interesting kind of future for all things third-party applications. It is helping it. Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
Sorry, I was reacting to the results, Matt.
Oh, please, yes. I can't see them, so please share.
Yeah, 90% are not using Copilot at their firms, but 10% of our attendees are. And so that is a very interesting statistic.
That is very, especially with the 48% going to new Outlook, but only 10% using. I would have thought it would have been higher because a lot of the firms we were talking to were going to new Outlook so that they could use Microsoft Copilot. Interesting to see that one might not have anything to do with the other. That is very interesting.
It is, and yet, Matt, I also think that there is, it was funny. I was reading about someone who, kind of dubbed this the AI standoff. It isn't that. It really is that we're all preparing by coming to webinars such as this to see what does it all mean, right?
Oh.
And what do we need to do? So I feel like where we are is in this preparedness stage. And when we do this webinar 6 months from now, I'll bet you
that percentage will be higher for sure. And look, I think we'll talk about this a little going forward, but this is a new form of generative AI, which causes us to pause and say, do I trust this? Do I trust this new form of AI that's come out in the market? And I think people are going to wait and see a little bit. Hopefully, we'll point out a couple areas where you might, if you are looking to use Copilot in the near future, how you can kind of dip your toe in the water and gain some trust with some basic capabilities. We'll talk about that here in a second. But again, it's a generalist virtual assistant. I will emphasize generalist here. You will still need your third-party applications. And to me, and I think Sherry, it's how can we combine Copilot with some of our third-party applications and really unlock superpowers capabilities here. It's helping automate and streamline tasks. We'll point out two very specific examples around how we're using it here for that, as well as what we hear from our customer base. This is all done through natural language interaction. If you've used for the 90% who have not used Copilot yet, if you use ChatGPT or any of these other large language model Copilot type applications, is very similar. It's very good at data analysis. I'll call it email management and collaborative work. And what I mean by collaborative, if I'm inside Teams, it's very helpful there. A couple areas to pull out there. It is Microsoft's very bullish play at AI integration within the Office suite. You are going to see it everywhere across the Office suite. And we've got a slide that kind of points out exactly where you'll see it, but it is everywhere. There is no place Copilot is not. And we've got, again, a couple screenshots on that. The big benefit is it takes natural language requests, essentially turns them into structured requests automatically, unbeknownst to the user, and does a bunch of cool things for us, like summarization, like data analysis. Again, we'll point out a couple of those here on some slides that Sherry and I have after this. We do see it as a big proficiency gain. You can kind of type anything. You can mistype, you mistype, misspell, and it understands what you're trying to say and do across a multitude of applications within the Office suite, and can help you get to those conclusions more quickly. Just one very quick example would be like, as we have Teams meetings here, you can turn on Copilot's, you can turn on transcription. Copilot watches the transcription and can immediately summarize the key takeaway actions and assign the appropriate resource to that action for you. That is just one very basic example of how we're using it here, but we see as a massive productivity and efficiency gain for not only Litera, but really anybody who's looking to use Copilot. Data analysis and visualization. If you want to just throw at a pile of data and say, pull out the common themes from this pile of data I've got, a common example that we need as we prioritize bodies of work for our particular products. We hear our customers using it in similar ways to better understand their data sets. It's very good at that. I always like to point out the enhanced security and privacy. So ChatGPT has gotten a little bit better and been a little bit more vocal about some of the security policies they've got around sending data up to their LLMs and it not using that data to train future models. Microsoft has very, very strong, probably the strongest in the market right now in terms of data security. And it's one reason we like, as we build applications that have generative capabilities, leveraging Microsoft's Azure OpenAI capabilities. In terms of how Copilot assists legal professional workflows, these are just a couple as we talk to that 10% of our customer base, based on the poll there, what we're hearing quite a bit. One is around summarization of emails. So if you are using new Outlook, you'll have Copilot. If you ever, I'm sure everybody on this phone can sympathize with this. You've been copied into a very long thread and you need to take some action, but you'd have to start all the way at the bottom of that email and read all the way to the top. Copilot has a summarization feature where you can, at the top of that email, click summarize. It summarizes that very lengthy chain that you've just been added to. It can tell you if you have an action and kind of what the history of that email is. It also can do that if you've been added to a Teams chat that's been going on for a day or a week. Be added, what's happened over the last 2 days, 3 days. It can tell you these things. It can help automatically draft quick responses to emails, not only within emails, but as well as Microsoft Word. So that kind of Copilot can work in two ways. One, in kind of this inline drafting mode, as well as within a task pane where you can ask it questions. And then it can, it can scan important dates and do quite a significant amount of things for you within Outlook itself. Some screenshots in terms of what that looks like. So that summarization feature, I use this very frequently. I am copied into a message and I need to come up to speed quickly on that message. And most likely everyone's inbox is quite full these days. So to help me come up to speed on what's being said in that message, there is a button at the top that says Summarize by Copilot. I can click it. It tells me in this very long chain that's been going back and forth that I've just been added to, what are the key points and are there any action items for me? So this is, as you roll out new Outlook, that's what you'll see. In terms of what you're going to see across the Office suite from the task pane Copilot, this would be the image that you'll get there, the task pane that will open on the right. This is from Copilot. And again, a lot of what we see firms telling us they're using it for and how we're using it here is as you're having these meetings either with your clients or our internal meetings that we're having or meetings with you where we're presenting, we're able to turn on the transcription. And at the end of that transcription, Copilot will ask if you want to summarize all the key points and assign action items to particular users. It does that automatically. I've seen the results of that to be very, very, very good. I will say the longer the meeting goes, if you're talking about a 3 to 4 hour meeting, it might not be as great, but anything 1 hour or less, very, very strong at summarizing the key points. One of the, I'll call it a hidden Copilot, is the M365 chat. And I actually think this is the most powerful Copilot that exists that nobody knows about. So if you go to portal.office.com, you'll see a new button there on the left. And that button will say M365 chat, and it'll have this kind of rainbow Copilot logo. And what that allows you to do is bring up just a blank kind of chat canvas that you can ask any question. And it will go and answer that question based looking across all of the entirety of the Office suite. Whereas Copilot for Word is just looking at that document on screen or Word, or Copilot for Outlook is just looking at Outlook. The M365 chat looks across the Office universe. Now, this is also where I think Microsoft has done some smart things around transparency. Obviously, as I mentioned, only 10% of us are looking at Copilot. Trust is something we need to build with this application. I think Microsoft is doing a great job in helping us build that trust. Now, it's still new, and I'll point out an example of that here, but I asked it yesterday. You can see January 9th, when was my last meeting with Sherry, and what did we discuss? And it came back and it told me my last meeting was on January 10th. Now, I asked it yesterday, and it told me a date in the future. So obviously that was not correct, but it largely summarized it correctly. What was discussed at that last meeting with Sherry. It got one of our internal team members' names incorrectly. Andreen is her name, but it picked up Dream, but it was very close, 80–90% accurate. And the piece around transparency is that at the bottom of that, you'll see it has a link to a reference there. Oh, I don't know how it moved forward. It has a link to a reference there, and it essentially says, I got this information from the following that I found within the Office ecosystem. So again, another nice addition there for Copilot. I think next, Sherry, you were gonna talk quickly about Litera Create and how it can already start to be partnered with certain applications.
Yeah, and so the key is in the name, right? Copilot. The fact that really Copilot is an assistant, right? It works together with many things, whether that's a user or whether that's an application. And so in this demonstration, what we see is we're creating something with Litera Create, and then taking the little Copilot icon that appears in the left margin and having it draft for us the body of a letter. Now, Matt, I'm not seeing the video play. That doesn't mean that it's not, but there we go.
Click it again. Is it going now?
There we go. So again, we use Litera Create to create a letter, so it knows that, you know, what we're going to be building. And also, I'm leveraging existing data that tells me all of the things I need to fill in about who I'm writing this to. What happens then is we generate the document. If you all notice, that too is processing on the server because it is a web-enabled web architecture application. I make one little change and then have it generate that entire document onto my screen. Now here we are, we're on the line where I'm going to start typing, although I am going to reference Copilot and ask it to draft up the body of my letter. And it's really interesting, Matt. If you say you want to draft a letter, it'll give you like the salutation and the signature block. But since we already have all of those, I said simply draft the body. I even gave it an instruction about what style I wanted it to apply, but I'm like you, I had, you know, it was limited. It would only deliver it in normal, as we see here. And so I had to then kind of go in and apply the formatting that I wanted. But it drafted up substantively aspects of the body of this letter that now the lawyer can go ahead and tailor as they need to, or add things, remove things. You can even, you know, call it, ask it to do it in a particular voice, or you could have it, you know, be more concise or more substantive. It's really, again, a nice assistant to help you with that drafting. And so here you go. We've used Copilot, the user, and this task they have for sending a letter to a client on a particular matter.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue in terms of where we think where will Copilot evolve to. So Sherry is essentially showing a Convisto application working in combination with Microsoft Copilot there. But what we can see Microsoft already talking about, they've shown it on stage at some of their build conferences, is a plugin ecosystem. So what I'm showing here on screen is ChatGPT and its plugin ecosystem. Very specifically, I'm showing it with Instacart. And I just think it's a good way to demonstrate where we see Copilot going, and potentially how we see third-party applications being extended. We still see there'll always be a need to have them stand alone, maybe a ribbon or a tab within Microsoft. But how can you integrate that third-party application as well into Copilot so it can take natural language requests within the Office suite? So in this example here, what a plugin looks like in ChatGPT is, I asked it for, I wanted a dinner suggestions for a family of 4. It gave me those. It gave me a list of ingredients. As soon as it was done giving me the ingredients, it said, do you want me to add these to your shopping cart? And it engaged Instacart instantly because I'm using ChatGPT 4 with the plugins turned on. Now, Microsoft has promised a similar ecosystem. Obviously, they're leveraging OpenAI. A plugin for a ChatGPT-like application will be very similar to a plugin for the Copilot ecosystem. So what I mean by that is, if your third-party application is built on a modern Office add-in, it is essentially a web service with REST APIs. It will be able to be plugged into Copilot as a plugin. And as you have conversations about the document on screen, you could engage automatically other third-party applications to help you bring you information, format, style, repair, whatever that third-party application does, engage it via Copilot, via their plugin ecosystem. Now that plugin ecosystem is still in its infancy. Nobody really has access to it currently, but that is where we see Copilot evolving to, is this kind of plugin, exactly what we see with ChatGPT. With that, we're going to talk about some of the enterprise requirements, and we understand, look, this is a significant financial investment. You have to weigh the pros and cons. Is some of the benefits that are currently available in Copilot worth it? Arguably, maybe not for everybody on the phone today. If only 10% of us are looking at Copilot, what I would say, I'm sure he's going to run us through this slide, is I would encourage you to try to get at least that minimum seat to test, to try it out for a bit. If you're on an E5 or E5 license, buy a couple seats of it, try it out, see if it's going to have a significant needle mover for those kind of trivial remedial tasks, like summarizing, like being able to tell you exactly what's going on in a long email chain and those types of things.
So again, what the enterprise requirements for Copilot is that you have to have an E3 or E5 license, and you have to have the M365 enterprise apps installed and deployed. That is, key number one. Then what you need to do is to, again, subscribe to Copilot. It's a $30 per user per month cost, but there is a 300 seat minimum. You do have to purchase that many licenses, additional licenses to add in Copilot, which, as Matt said, is certainly a financial investment. So again, if you are in a situation where you might be a firm smaller than that, it's a challenge, and it really does create somewhat of an access problem. So I know one of our attendees, Matt, even put that minimum in there as one of the causes for not more than 10%. I totally agree.
Yeah.
These are things that we will work with Microsoft. You all will work with Microsoft to help kind of challenge that minimum. Then you also need to have new Outlook and classic Outlook, just so everyone knows. It's been announced, and we even have a link here to the actual roadmap location where they talk about it. Classic Outlook will, in February, have access, Matt, to Copilot. That means you could still run your comm add-ins, but I would say, again, your experience isn't going to be quite as delightful, let's say. And then I think another huge requirement for everyone is readiness. You have to be ready in multiple levels, not just all of this, but the pillars of readiness that we have for this are really threefold. You need to understand what the technology does and how it will benefit. Again, we've had a lot of questions in our chat, Matt, about the value of this. Is there really value to this for a professional user? You have to have the infrastructure ready, again, whether it's your access to host it or your access to, again, maybe a tenant that you set up in Microsoft's Azure environment. And then the technical readiness, we went ahead and said on the next slide what some of those things are, so you all know and can reference this. You need to have Microsoft, and wow, for the first time, we all get to use this publicly, Entra. I hope I'm saying that right. But that's the new ID technology that had been formerly called Azure Active Directory IDs. And this is the mechanism that allows you to have the authentication that you're going to need. And you also need to watch the fact that certain things roll out at a certain moment. So November 1st and December 12th were really big dates. And so again, we are very early days with this. And then finally, on the right side, Matt, this is what you were mentioning about what's the list of Copilot. Copilot
Everywhere.
In the M365 applications for the enterprise is in Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, OneNote for Windows, Vivo, the Power Platform, Planner, Loop, Whiteboard, all of them have a Copilot. And currently in preview are the ones listed there, SharePoint, and then Excel is in preview as well. One other thing that you all should know, and this is again another thing, hasn't changed in 30 years, we now have a newly announced Windows 11 keyboard that has not just a Windows key, but a Copilot key. So that's pretty exciting too. It'll make it even easier for people to leverage the experience. They are truly all in. I think the adoption requirements are what we go through next. Microsoft has given all of you ways to kind of wrap your head around this. And you'll notice they even have it by persona. So if you're a professional business user, click on that sort of image there. And you'll get the kinds of tools and guidelines and white papers and research and maybe even learning tutorials that take you through that. If you're the actual person who's trying to build adoption and trust in your organization, they have that too. And there's a couple of ideas there. Maybe what you do is you cultivate communities who are evaluating this. We had a conversation, Matt, the other day with a firm who has already established an AI task force. So akin to the tech committee, they now have an AI committee comprised of lawyers and folks from across the firm, IT professionals and adoption people. And they are working this, right? How can we leverage this? Let's make sure that it is trustworthy, and how it is we should apply it. Bring, together, maybe have a kind of hackathon, where you just kick the tires on it, so to speak. We added one other thing here, and that is that do keep in mind, now, Matt, I know that your calendar is meticulously done. So your data is gold in Outlook, but let me just say that if you have enterprise data that is not yet ready, understand that's one of the places you need to start, because data is the new gold. And so, again, this is another readiness adoption requirement that you will have for Copilot for M365.
Yeah, we're kind of borrowing the tagline there. If everybody has seen the new Salesforce commercial with Matthew McConaughey, if not, Google it after this session. But essentially, the Salesforce is saying AI is the new. If AI is the new Wild West, what does that make data? It makes it the new gold. We agree that the power to all of these systems is the underlying data systems.
So I do want to just provide this as a snapshot for you all of where Copilots are coming everywhere, and the link to the keynote that Satya said, we are the Copilot company. So please, we'll just leave this here for reference, screen capture if you like, you'll get the recording afterwards. And then next, I think what we need to do, Matt, is talk about our key takeaways and start to queue up some of our additional polls and questions.
Yep, we're going to key up a poll right now. The question will be, what are key use cases for using Copilot at your firm? While you answer that question, Sherry's going to take us through some of the benefits for Copilot for legal professionals.
For legal professionals, document creation and review is definitely an area where Copilot can greatly assist. In M&A deals, for instance, it could help draft a preliminary term sheet, and then lawyers could use Litera Compare to do the negotiations to capture any of the changes the parties have made to the document. In IP transactions, Copilot might be useful for trademarks and copyright agreements. In corporate finance, you might find that useful in drafting a forbearance agreement. In the case, Matt, of, again, data being gold, for data extraction and summarization, M&A attorneys, Copilot could be used to summarize the underwriting agreements and IPOs. And then equally, in legal research, Copilot could generate a lot of queries and filter results to help attorneys find what they're looking for. And by the way, this is another thing I want to mention, that is a that is someone you need in your hackathon. That is that role, that talent you need in any of the AI or Copilot task force you establish, because they've been researching forever, right? And so they just have a talent and a natural gift for this. For the key use cases, Matt, here are our results. Document drafting tops the list at 35%. Email summaries at 21%. Meeting summaries, the one that you went through, 19%. Data visualization is 6%. And again, tying with the summaries for meetings, research. Absolutely, absolutely research. So there is our list.
Yeah, I think the ILTA Forum did a similar poll. The ILTA Tech Survey for 2023 did a similar poll towards the end of the year. If you read, I think doc creation was there. Now I don't think number 2 was email, but I personally see email as summarization as well as note taking as big. So does the group here.
Yeah. And then I think that one of the things we wanted to make sure to prepare you for is that, again, through this year, you are going to be encountering all sorts of business partners that are implementing these services into the Office applications. And so some of the questions you might ask them is, what are your plans for moving off of com add-ins? When is that? What is that? Are you exploring any Gen AI functionality in any of your tech offerings? And by the way, what are the services you'll be connecting to do that? And what data will you be trying to leverage to do that? Are you using or planning to use Copilot and build plugins into it? Or are you planning to integrate your technology offerings in Copilots, maybe not just in Word, maybe across that spectrum? I mean, again, Matt, that developer world, it's just like the declaration, let's have an application that works for the whole world. Now we have a development tool that works for every application leveraging Copilot. So again, these are some critical questions. There are many others, but again, just a few things we wanted to kind of plow you with in your research on it.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, the biggest one here is probably the questions around com and Office add-ins. I do think, look, and based on the percentage here, 90% of us aren't looking at Copilot yet. We're going to take a little bit of time to see where this stuff all lands. I do think, keep that in the back of your mind. We do see it as a significant game changer here, but all of us own, at least everybody on this phone owns at least one com add-in today, most likely one that plugged into Outlook. And we need to be working with our vendors to see what they're doing in terms of looking at that future technology state.
So Matt, we are running short on time, and I know there's a couple of questions we at least want to try to get to, but let's just keep going, and we'll
go through this section pretty quick in terms of how Litera helps. Hopefully all of you know this. Obviously you can visit our main site for more details. A lot of our applications today that are bringing value to the legal community do sit very tightly into Microsoft Office. We will be looking to the Office add-in model for all of these applications. We've got a screenshot of what that development currently looks like. But we have a host of other applications that really helps from an end-to-end perspective, from the business of law to the practice of law at your firm. If you are interested in any one of these logos on screen, let us know. We'd love to talk to you more about that. In terms of how we're closely working with Microsoft, I mentioned we do talk to the Office add-in team as we look to move our desktop applications to the new Office add-in world. If we run into any issues with their Office JS APIs, we can pick that phone up and talk to them, and they are very responsive in terms of getting that on the roadmap and resolved quickly, so that these, not just Litera products, but these third-party applications in legal can more quickly move over to their preferred models. We're also talking with them about Copilot and what the future of all things Copilot looks like for them. This is what our drafting applications look like if you own our Litera desktop application today. We are going through, we'll call it a rebranding / reimagination exercise for this, as even today, these desktop applications do have 0365 versions. There are hosted versions available for some of these capabilities. So more than just a desktop application, these are kind of, we're bringing them to be omnipresent or available anywhere from any device application. So we'll change that name to Litera Draft. Those will be changes you'll see from our marketing teams over the next months from us. In terms of what you can expect to see from some of these, very specifically the drafting applications, is a modern office add-in application. We, again, are very interested in this technology for a multitude of reasons. It brings all the drafting applications together in concert into a very lightweight, responsive application to you and your users to use from anywhere on any device. But you'll not only see drafting applications, this office add-in model will allow any other Litera product that wants to plug into it. So there could be a day that Foundation, as an example, might sit within this office add-in, unified office add-in model from within the Microsoft Word stack. Similarly, we're looking at extending our office add-in capabilities to more robust capabilities within Outlook. We know our users are spending a lot of time in Word and in Outlook. This is a directionally thought-provoking image, by no means under development yet, but this is essentially showing a multitude of Litera products, not just drafting, but in this example, you might have like a big square, a Foundation, a Metadact application working in concert, all within a single office add-in, making your users more efficient while they work within Outlook. With that, we'll say, if you want to know more about anything we've discussed today, visit us at Legal Week. We are booth 2232. I will quickly move on to this, the QR code. If you scan that, that will allow you to contact us and set up a conversation to meet with us and talk about all things more. If you're not at Legal Week, that is. Happy to chat there. And then with the last 4 minutes, we will take questions, which I know have been coming in, and we will take those now.
Matt, there are the majority of our questions are about the cost and investment in order to enable Copilot. And I think that one of our observers said, you know, the fact that we were surprised by the 10% of Copilot, you know, people looking at it, that really the attribution there is this 300 seat minimum and the cost. And frankly, the fact that all of that and the infrastructure might be too expensive. And so I think that, you know, what I've seen anyway over history is that certain things will, once they have more traffic, let's call it, the larger traffic, you know, this has to become more accessible, I think is really what everyone is saying. And I just wondered what your thoughts on that were.
Well, here, what I'd say is we have the 300 seats here. We are paying for that investment. We do see significant, yes, it was something we needed. We discussed very heavily because it is a big cost investment. But once we've turned it on, we meet a lot here. Even the efficiencies we're getting out of Teams meetings and the summarization capabilities, that was taking 20 minutes to capture all the notes, or maybe even longer to capture all the notes and assign them. Now it's automatically done. Even that benefit alone, if I wrapped an ROI around it, it was probably justifying the cost of this thing for me. So having said that, I would encourage more people to look at it. I understand largely why Microsoft has these big caps on it right now. It's expensive to run. They're still trying to figure out the hardware requirements to run this thing on. It's expensive, right? There's token limits for a reason on these applications. Microsoft has largely waived all of those for us. So it is expensive for Microsoft to host this and run these applications. And there are some significant barriers right now financially. We do think those will continue to come down, obviously, as the hardware gets cheaper and the models get smarter and smarter. I would encourage everybody to look at it. If you can even get a couple seats or like borrow your buddy's login. Don't tell your IT team I said that, but it is worth definitely taking a look at.
So one other thing that has come up is that many of our customers who are using Litera COM and Visto add-ins today are wondering if what we have done is eliminated them all at the moment and replaced them all with the Microsoft Office add-ins that are web enabled. I think I can take part of that, but if you would, dovetail here, Matt. We have not eliminated our Calmer Visto add-ins at this time. What we have done, though, is we have taken several of them, and this has been happening over the last 2 years, in fact. We've taken several of them and made them Office web-enabled add-ins. And so they have been running in a Mac environment to the web environment. And so we're kind of, what do I want to call it? A bridging strategy is probably the approach. And so Matt, what's happening kind of on that longer term, you mentioned our new Litera drafting tools and unified experience. So what can our customers expect?
What I'd say on that is we hear you. I promise you. We know that you constantly tell us that change management is one of the most expensive things at your law firm. We understand it. So Visto.com, we are continuing to develop those applications and move them forward. But we also are heavily integrated within the Microsoft Office suite, and we see there are significant benefits, and it's only a matter of time before Microsoft will not support a lot of this legacy technology going forward. So we need to keep an eye on the future as well. Your feedback is also, we need more performant applications in terms of startup. We need them to more seamlessly integrate with one another, as well as outside the Litera ecosystem into the legal technology ecosystem. All of this is significantly more possible on this Office add-in model. But rest assured that those Office add-ins are being developed right now. We're showing them here today. If you want to contact us and better understand timing of some of those applications, we would love to work with you on that. But the Visto.com stuff that you have installed today and your users are using and getting benefit from are not going away anytime soon. And we would absolutely maintain those for a significant amount of times as you look to transition to the Office add-in models.
Okay, so one quick thing. There are a number of questions all about, won't these these Copilot plugins and or Office add-ins sort of eliminate the need for some of the things that we already have a Visto.com add-in for. Equally, they want to kind of know more about the workflow. So please, as we said at the start, we will take all of these questions we have not yet answered, or these topics and thoughts that we have not had time to actually go through. And we will put those responses in an email to everyone on this webinar today, and also those of you who registered and haven't been able to attend. Because at this moment, we really do need to break. Matt, thank you so much for all of this, and to everyone who attended today to learn more about what Litera has in store and what Microsoft has in store for organizations like us. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.